Hi, we are Nurarita and Ida Fernandez, and we're going to present our presentation about can Maragall be a climate shelter? In this presentation, we will talk about what is a climate shelter, types and characteristics of them, XMRC, how to make buildings a climate shelter, and the design criteria they have to follow. What is a climate shelter? Climate shelters or refuges are spaces prepared to reduce the impact of global warming, especially rising temperatures. According to the forecast, if measures are not applied to mitigate climate change, by 2050 the temperature will rise by 2 degrees centigrade, an increase that especially affects the most vulnerable groups, such as children and the elderly. A climate refuge is an accessible interior or outdoor space that during extreme weather events provides thermal comfort, rest and safety to the population. Climate shelters do not necessarily have to be heated, but they must guarantee a comfort temperature. In outdoor spaces, this temperature can be reached by natural methods, such as water points or a high presence of precipitation that helps to thermoregulate the temperature, giving a cooler and more comforting environment. Climate shelters. We have housing, block, and equipment. Housing is like a climatic shelter inside a house, and block is a common space in a residential building. Both of them are suitable for people in the rest group, but one of those disadvantages would be that the construction cost must be taken into account, and this must be assumed by the owners, which some of them may be in a poverty energy. And equipment is adapting a public building. It would be a zero cost since the public administration would take care of it, and in this case, Can Maragall would be a public building used as an equipment climate shelter. When we try to make a climate shelter, there are a few characteristics that these ones have to contain. It can be divided into groups, zones, and available services. In zones, we have day rest area and night rest area. These two zones are mainly used to make sure everyone is able to spend time in a place with comfort temperature in cold or hot seasons. We use those equations to find the lower limit of comfort temperature and the upper limit comfort temperature. Once we have these two zones, there are 3 services that a climate shelter must have: a toilet area, a place to hydrate and reduce body temperature; water, about 120 liters per person each day will be guaranteed for proper hydration and temperature regulation; and electricity. Electricity is necessary to use air conditioning or heating. If it occurs a general cut, it is necessary to have an alternative source of energy. Metropolitan Network of Climate Refuges, XMRC, brings together municipal facilities such as libraries, civic centers, which can provide thermal comfort conditions in episodes of extreme temperatures. The metropolitan area of Barcelona is now a territory clearly affected by the consequences of climate change. These effects are, for example, the increase in temperature, the reduction of rain, and the increase in the periods of rocks, floods, and extreme temperatures, which will worsen more or less intensely in the coming years depending on the measures we take to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. Excessive and sustained heat will have direct effects on people's health, as it will lead to an increase in mortality and morbidity of the population. This increase in heat will also have an impact on the quality of public space in urban environments as they use, as well as an increase in the demand for cooling homes to achieve adequate living conditions. Climate shelters, therefore, are one of the strategies available in the metropolis of Barcelona to try to alleviate the negative effects that heat waves have on people. Can Maragall is not right now a climate shelter, but with modifications, it can be. In order to make buildings like Can Maragall climatic shelters, they have to make improvements in their structure. To be considered a climate shelter, buildings will be classified according to colors and according to what they have to add to meet the requirements. For example, with the color blue will be an installation of water points of different characteristics, green will be the incorporation of shaded areas and vegetation, and gray the interventions in buildings to improve thermal insulation and energy efficiency. In this case, Can Maragall, the colors will be blue and gray. Depending on the location of each building, different measures will have to be applied to be considered effective climate shelters. The first one, thermomassive external walls, are used to delay the passage heat from the peak hot period and to absorb excess heat, helps the interior of buildings stay cool. We have courtyards. That is desirable in areas with very low humidity. Why? To provide evaporative cooling. Courtyards act as a cooling wall and modifies a microclimate, and also the vegetation helps with cooling by transpiration, trapping cold air and filtering dust. In humid climates, emphasis is given to cross ventilation as the high humidity of air creates discomfort for human beings. The structure of the settlements becomes scattered and loose in order to channel winds through the streets and inside buildings. Trees and planting can be relied for shading, and pergolas can cheaply and effectively provide shade to an open space. The warm, humid climate, openness and shading are the dominant characteristics of the buildings. Buildings designed for passive cooling would be as open as possible to ensure the maximum possible cross-ventilation. Consequently, this would be totally unsuitable for air conditioning. If the building is going to be air-conditioned, it would have to be closed, sealed and well insulated. As we have seen, Karmaragay right now, it cannot be considered a possible climate shelter because it does not meet the required characteristics that a climate refuge has to fulfill. But in order to make Karmaragay a good climate shelter, we should have to modify and add characteristic elements of climate shelters to it. Having said that, we finish our presentation. Wish you enjoyed.